Thanks very much, Eva-Lotta. Well, here we are. Thank you very much, one and all, for joining us. My name is Ben Crothers. I'm the new president of Graphic Recorders Australia and very, very happy with that role. And also joining us is Matthew McGain. He's our treasurer. And of course, we've got Eva-Lotta Lamm joining us all the way from Germany, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to hand over to Eva-Lotta in a tick. But firstly, I certainly want to begin by acknowledging, for me, the country that I'm on today. I'm on Darug and Guringai land. And please do take this opportunity to use the chat window and add in whose land you're on, where you're joining us from. That's always nice to see. But I certainly acknowledge the peoples of the Darug and Guringai, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and for their custodianship of this land. And I certainly extend that respect to anyone of Aboriginal descent who is joining us today. Thank you, Shaheen. Shaheen's living and playing on good old Gadigal land in Sydney. Matt, where are you joining us from? Do you know?
Yes, very happy to be hosting Eva-Lotta here in the Sketch Group and Graphic Gear headquarters at in Wurundjeri country, in part of the Kulin Nation. Yes, we've managed to figure it so that Eva-Lotta's in the room over there. You can see all of the Neuland store swag in the background. It's a bit of a storage room, but it is very comfortable. She's got all of the setup she needs to do her thing. And yeah, very happy to welcome her here today.
That's where the magic happens for graphic gear in that room there. And I certainly want to thank Eva-Lotta Lamm again for joining us. She is a world-renowned sketch noter. She's a long-time designer, visual thinker, and a fantastic speaker. I've had the pleasure of being her friend for a number of years. In fact, I think, Eva-Lotta, you might have looked at an earlier draft of my book, Presto Sketching, when I was first drawing that. And for that, I'm still very, very appreciative. And Eva-Lotta certainly does a lot of training like this as well, informally and more formally, and loves helping people use drawing to solve problems. We love that. So enough from me. Over to you, Eva-Lotta.
All right. Well, first of all, hello. Thank you, Matt, for hosting me. Thank you, Ben, for organizing this wonderful session. I'm excited to be here. I've been traveling in Australia for 6 weeks just for fun, and it's really nice to, in the last week that I'm here, I have to leave on Monday, to actually do some sketching stuff with you guys because that's always cool, no matter where I am. Um, Let me share my screen. I prepared. Oh, no. Let me ask you a question. No, let me share the thing because my thing asks the question. Sorry. I've been on holiday mode for the last 5 weeks, so I have to get back into being serious. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share this thing first. All right. Good. So here we are. Drawing visual metaphors. I'm gonna um, I'm gonna talk a little bit about metaphors and analogies. I love metaphors and analogies. Analogies even more than metaphors. I'll get into that, what that is and why it's powerful. And we'll also have a little exercise to do together. So pen and paper would be a good idea if you want to partake. We only have a very short amount of time, so I'll jump straight in. And my first question to you is, do you have a favorite metaphor? It doesn't have to be a visual metaphor. It can be a metaphor in language, you know? This one is being on cloud nine. Actually, fun fact, in Germany, when we are in love, we are on cloud seven. So we will never meet. When we're all in love, maybe every country has their own cloud. I don't know. We have seven, you have nine. I don't know who's on eight. Interesting. So if you could write that in the chat. Also, it doesn't have to be your favorite. Also, any good metaphors in language that you can think of that we use. Cloud 8, it's complicated. Yes, probably. Um, Throwing cereal into the ceiling fan. Okay, a metaphor for being for being busy. All right, yeah, that keeps you busy. Um, all right, in Australia, you're actually on cloud six because you're down under, and the other way around. Being in hot soup, being in trouble. Yes, that's really good. Oh, a frog in boiling water, slowly rising the temperature, and you don't notice that it's actually getting so hot. Um, We can't stop the waves, but we can learn how to surf. Yep, awesome. Indonesian has gathering like water buffaloes, which refers to a couple living together, not being married. All right. The water buffaloes don't get married, they just hang out together. That's very sweet. That's what I do as well. I'm a water buffalo, I guess. Ducks paddling on the pond. Awesome. Well, when we think about metaphors, actually, when we start looking in our own language, we can find so many metaphors in our language. Just the idea of, oh, I'm feeling really good today. You're on a high, and when you're feeling low, like you're not feeling good. These are already metaphors, very simple, because we know that from the top, there's the sun, probably something good is coming. And when you're down on the floor, maybe you're weak. It all comes from our physical experience of the world, um, or lots of metaphors in our language. Why are metaphors so powerful, you might ask? I'll start with a little intro. So the word metaphor actually comes from the Greek metaphora, which means to transfer or literally to carry over. Meta is like over or beyond, and phora means to carry. So in the Poetics, Aristotle defined it as a transference of a word from one meaning to another. So we are actually taking the meaning of something we know and put it onto something we know maybe a little bit less about, so we can actually use the knowledge that we already have to understand something that we are less familiar with. So that's a superpower because we are reusing capacity and knowledge that we already have. And he's also highlighting that it's actually a skill. It's the skill of recognizing similarity in things. So we can train that and we can become better at spotting similarities and at actually transferring knowledge from something we know into something we don't know. Um, because when we look at some of the metaphors in our language, like when you have a broken heart, when you're not on this cloud anymore, but your heart is broken, we don't have to explain this much because we know other broken things, vases can break, glass can break. We also know that maybe things that break, they are fragile in the first place. A hard rock doesn't break that easily. We also know what it feels like when something breaks. When my favorite mug breaks, I'm feeling sad. So there's already a lot of knowledge I have. I also know what could happen before, there needs to be some impact to break something. So we already know there's probably something that caused the breaking and that it was probably aggressive or harsh or some sort of an impact. It wasn't just from stroking and being nice. Um, but we also know that things that are broken, sometimes we can repair them. Maybe they won't look exactly like they did before. Maybe there are some scars, maybe there are some marks that are left. But if we're Japanese, we could fix them with gold to do the kintsugi and make it even nicer. But we know with time and care, we can probably fix it. So we have a lot of knowledge that is already packed into this image of having a broken heart. Um, or if we talk about somebody who's a shark in business, they have sharp teeth. You probably don't want to meet them. They are dangerous. You have to be careful. They are also very fast. And you don't see them coming. And they are also aggressive. It's maybe a person you don't want to get into business with. There's a lot of implications already. Um, or if we have this metaphor in the expression to sweep something under the rug, we all know what that means. It means we're hiding something. Usually when I sweep something under a rug, nobody else is in the room. If there is, I don't know, you have a secret together. It's secretive. You don't want anybody to notice. You probably do it quick, so that in case somebody enters, nobody sees it. We also know, honestly, it's not a real solution because the dirt is still there and it's under your carpet. Um, and we also know it can be discovered. Maybe sooner or later it will when somebody moves that carpet. You can only hope they don't figure out it was you. But if it's your flat, then who else could it be? Um, and also we know that it doesn't feel good. I mean, we do it and we do it, but really it's not making us feel good. So in this expression, there's already a lot of information, and that's really powerful. And of course, visualizing that makes it even more powerful. I mean, in language, it's already great because we have our imagination, but why not show when we can show, not just tell? Uh, and the last metaphor I want to bring is a bridge. We use that in graphic recording and graphic facilitation all the time. We know it's some sort of a connection. It can bridge a gap or cross over an obstacle. What else do we know? A bridge usually has two sides, so there's one and the other that is connected, or before and an after. We can think about what that means. But then also there are other aspects. It can be stable or it can be shaky. It depends on the type of bridge. So here is where visualization actually comes in. We can show what kind of a bridge it is. It can be durable or temporary, just crossing the river quickly or for forever. So this is where visualization can be really helpful because guess what? All of these are bridges. All of these help me to cross over a gap, but some are a little bit more temporary, and some are only for pedestrians, and some are for industrial traffic. So visualization really can help us be more precise, more playful, and more inclusive, depending on what the problem is that you're talking about when you're working with a group of people, what feels right. And now I want to go into analogy. Because analogy for me is kind of an extension of a metaphor. A metaphor is like a simple image, and an analogy is kind of building on it. So it originates from another Greek word, analogia. It means proportion or relation. In the beginning, it only meant proportion in the mathematical sense, so like length to width or something. But over time, it also meant relation in terms of meaning, relation in meaning, not only in proportion. Plato used analogies a lot. The analogy of the cave, for example, that we are in this real world, we are the prisoners sitting in the cave, only seeing the shadows being played behind the fire, and the liberation from the cave of the real life, our mind playing the shadows. To ascend out of the cave, we need to get into philosophy and understand actually the higher concepts. La 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 la. And he used a lot of different analogies as an argumentative tool to bridge the gap between visible reality and the abstract world of thought. And we are dealing in the abstract world of thought, an abstract world of problems and lots of things that are actually not tangible. So we can do that as well by using analogies to use our knowledge from the real world to understand things in the abstract world of thought, as Plato did by using tangible examples to explain abstract concepts. Um, and this is just, I am not a stickler for definitions, like what is exactly a metaphor versus an analogy, and where are the boundaries and what exactly is the definition. I'm more interested in how they can help me. But usually analogies are based on metaphors, but they're expanding on them to form a more comprehensive comparison. So if a metaphor is just one object, uh, an analogy actually builds a whole world around this object, where this object sits, and everything in this world has a meaning. So let's look at an example. So looking at the example of sweeping something under the rug, that's a great expression, and we already learned a lot from it because we know a lot about it. But when I want to build an analogy out of it, I usually ask myself, what are the different elements in this and what is their meaning? And are there maybe more elements that can give me insight that I can add? So when I look at sweeping something under the rug, then usually the dirt is the problem. That's my definition right now. And if the dirt is the problem, then the sweeping is the act of not talking about it or not saying anything. All right, so um, there's also a carpet. And what could the carpet be? Depending on what you're talking about, um, it could be several things, but for me, it's the relationship with the person because I'm sweeping it under the rug. Because I don't want to say something to a person about this problem. So for me, the rug represents the relationship. Like, good, but are there maybe more things in this situation? Well, there are usually people who do that because the broom doesn't do the work by itself. So there's a person who's not saying something, and what do they feel? It doesn't feel very good. And then there's also a person who doesn't know that something got swept under the rug. And then we can start asking questions, or we can think about different scenarios. So there could be many unspoken problems in the relationship, and the more you pile on to each other, the more the rug actually, maybe, I don't know, gets little mountains of all the problems. It becomes visible, it's not so easy to hide anymore. Um, we can also think about what happens when they get discovered eventually. What are the emotions in there? And why do they get discovered? And how do they get discovered? Um, we can also think about how we could do this situation differently. If we didn't sweep it under there, what would the solution be, or what would the possibility be? So we could actually talk to each other and maybe solve the problem together. And then the question could also be, what is this shovel? What does the shovel represent? What are the things that actually help us to communicate and to work together? It's also actually a nice metaphor, a broom and the shovel with a broom. It's like it could be a metaphor for collaboration as well, which is really nice because the two go together. Um, yeah, and so we can eliminate that together. We could also ask ourselves, what is the bin? What is, maybe we document the problem somewhere that we can learn from them, that the bin is actually not something that we throw out, but it's a reminder of things. So you see, we can build a whole world, like physically, elements around it, but also in time, like what happened before and what happened after. We can tell stories with it. Um, and I'll give you another example before we jump into a little exercise. We have this bridge again. And I mean, you can already think with me on that, but usually the problem is the gap, right, in the middle, and we want to get over this problem. So the bridge is my solution in this case. We also know that we have two sides. So in this case, because you're usually walking over a bridge from one side to another, it has a time aspect. So there's a situation before and there's a situation after. Maybe I could say the right-hand side is my goal. I don't know. What happens when the gap is kind of bigger or deeper? Maybe it's a more difficult problem. This is a problem, and this is a more difficult problem. Or maybe the edges the cliffs are steeper. Maybe they are cliffs and not just sides to the bridge. Um, or you could have a very risky problem. Here's my little shark in the water. So when the bridge doesn't hold, it gets even worse than just falling into the water than falling into shark-infested water. Here in Australia. We don't have that problem in Germany, but here it's a real thing. And then we can, of course, not only zoom out and put the situation around it, but we can also zoom in and think about and ask questions. So what does the solution consist of? What is the material that we're building with? So who brings the material? Who develops the solution? Who is part of the building? Is it just one person? Is it several people? How many bricks do we need? What does each brick represent to actually create the solution? Also, we can ask which resources do we need? How many of those? What are they? So we can start using adding questions as a way to maybe also create a template to fill that out with other people later. Whoops. Yeah, that's it. That's we could also think about, is there somebody from the other side who actually builds from the other side? You could see, you could add a lot of things in this world, but this is just my process of starting with a simple thing, thinking about the different parts that we have, adding more parts to it, and labeling what they represent and labeling questions that I could ask about each of these things when I actually bring it into the problem space that I'm looking at. Any questions, comments so far on this? You can also just unmute yourself and talk, because we are not the biggest group in the world, so we could have a conversation. Matthew.
I was just going to make the observation that I love that there's so much detail here, and yet the the goal, what the afterwards hasn't even been articulated yet. Like all of the stuff leading up to the thing is on there and is important, but the thing itself, we still don't know. We can still represent that. So I love that there's a heap of detail on the journey.
Yeah, we could also apply this to any kind of thing. It's still very in the metaphor land, and the question of what we are actually talking about is in terms of the abstract thing that we're projecting on it is still open. That's true.
And also that,
Yes.
oh, sorry, I was just
Yeah,
going to say,
go ahead.
and just that there's, such efficient use of line. Like there's so little line work, but it's telling so much of a story.
Yes, we don't need much. And also, labels are always your friend. A good label can save a bad sketch or a very simple sketch, because as soon as we know what it is, we see what it is, even if it's one line. Yeah, great. Anybody else who wants to say something? There's a comment. It's very interesting to see how you break down each metaphor and ask questions. It adds value and meaning to a simple little metaphor. Yes, exactly. Breaking down and drilling in and thinking about, oh, could this represent something? Sometimes a metaphor, like sometimes you get to the edge of an analogy and the analogy breaks down and not everything fits 100%, and that's fine as well. But the act of asking, oh, every little thing that could be in this world, could that have a meaning? It is really fun and enriching to try and discover things you could work with. Oh, I have seen bridges with pylons used as elements of strategy too. Yes, maybe a bridge not only has one arc and it has several arcs and it has pillars in the middle. You can play with the type of bridge that you have, you know. It could also be, as I said, just a log, or it can be like this bridge made out of bricks, or it could be like the Golden Gate Bridge, you know, with out of steel and big construction.
Or multi-lane to represent streams of work, maybe.
Multi-lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's not only cars going over there, maybe it's cars, pedestrians, and public transport. So there are different people who have different requirements from the solution. They all need to get to the other side, but they are getting there in different ways, in different speeds, with different vehicles. Interesting. All right. Any more comments, questions, insights, surprises so far? Good. Let's get to the interesting part and actually try to do something like that ourselves, because I think it's a lot of fun. So we do a little exercise. We have about half an hour left. I'm proud of my time management, if I might say so. Okay, we do an exercise. So we go from a metaphor to an analogy and try to be playful and explorative. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a fully fledged solution. It's just, trying to dig. So, I have prepared some objects. You should choose an object from the next slide and ask yourself, what could it stand for in general? So I'll show the objects in a minute again, but you see, it's just stuff we know. There are some simpler things that are maybe obvious what they could mean. I don't know, like the mountains. This could be a project reaching a goal, getting to the summit. To things that are maybe not that obvious. I don't know, the ice cream. What could the ice cream stand for? I don't know. You can choose something that feels easier to you, something that feels more challenging. But what we do after you chose an object, you think roughly what could that stand for, and then you try to label the parts of the object and what they could stand for, like we did with the bridge. If there's a question around it, like, I don't know, what resources do we need, or questions are labels as well. You can add more details and more context. So you can always zoom out and make the world bigger. So add things around it, like I don't know, for a bicycle, maybe you want to add a basket on the bicycle. Maybe it goes onto a road. Maybe it's on a bike lane versus a street. Maybe there are cars around it. I don't know. So you can put things around, but you can also add more details and zoom in. Maybe for the bridge, it's made out of bricks. And then you could also zoom more in and say, oh, what is the concrete for the bricks made out of? So that is always a good thing, like adding detail zooming in and adding context zooming out. And for each of the elements or the details that you add, label each element what it stands for, what it represents for you, or which question you could answer with this. And be explorative and playful rather than trying to be correct. We're trying to find new metaphors and new quirky things how we could explain something. It's not about having the solution ready after this. It's more of a, we don't have clients in the room, so we don't have to perform. We can just play and explore. That's it. Any questions of what we're doing? Good. So obviously this is an exercise in drawing. You can also, if in doubt, you can also draw several pictures. As you saw with sweeping something under the rug, if it's a temporal thing and you need another sketch to kind of, show something different that happened before or something in more detail, do as many sketches as you want. We're just building a world. So here are the objects that I chose for you. And I would say we'll take about 10 minutes to draw. So now it's 3 past. So we'll draw until 13 past. And then we have 15 minutes to actually talk about it. Alrighty. Have fun. All right. We have about 5 minutes left. So maybe you can find more detail, like maybe also absurd detail. Or find more context, maybe also absurd context. Sometimes quirky metaphors and analogies stick better. So let's dig a little bit more. All right, let's slowly wrap up. As far as we got, maybe you could go broader and deeper, but there's always more time in your life to do that. Right now, we are going to wrap it up. And let me stop sharing so I can see all your beautiful faces a little bit more. Yes. Any insights, things you noticed, surprises, frustrations? What was it like to do this? If you just want to unmute yourself and let us know.
Yeah, it was fun. I did the skateboard one.
You did the skateboard. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to hold it up into the camera? Because I want to see
Yeah.
what you.
I'll see if I can. Hang on.
Let me spotlight you for everybody. I will spotlight you for everybody if that's fine, so we can see what you drew.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. You have the skateboard. Tell us the story of the skateboard.
So I was inspired by my niece who's involved in this girls' skateboarding program in Victoria. I was sort of thinking about skateboarding, and it's one of those things that adults probably learn to be afraid of, like skiing, but sometimes kids can have more confidence. So, lack of experience isn't necessarily something that gets in your way. But, you can still build skills. You have protective gear and build skills with the help of a teacher and trying different things like meeting little challenges and taking bigger and bigger risks. The skateboard itself,
Yeah, I love the bowl you have there.
that's
The
meant to be
challenge and the risk taking. That's
yeah. And then it's also like, apart from being a means of transport, it's also fun and competition for young girls, like seeing adult women skateboarding is
Yeah.
a role model, and there's all the community around it, and the culture, with the clothes and the music and everything. So it's more than just a way of getting somewhere.
Yeah, imagine we manage some of our projects a little bit more like learning how to skateboard and learn something from the skateboarding community. I'm a roller skater,
Yeah.
so I love everything on wheels.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for sharing,
That's
Catherine.
okay.
That is amazing. All right, who else? Who else wants to share maybe or has an insight of what they discovered or something that surprised them or something that was horrible?
I
Um,
can share.
Sorry, Andrew,
Yep,
and then Catherine
yeah,
afterwards.
cool.
Okay,
Thank,
cool. Do
thanks,
you want the
Eva.
spotlight? Do you want to show something?
Yeah, I'll show something off. You can hear me okay?
Okay. Maybe the virtual background is making it difficult, but we'll see. Replace spotlight.
I can maybe turn it off. Yeah, I'll turn
Okay,
off the
what was the
background.
metaphor?
So I went with the tree, because that's
Mm.
always my go-to when I don't know what I want to do. I'll always just end up doodling a tree. Um, the but what I found in the process was that it just kept building and building, and more ideas just kept falling out as I
Hmm.
went. So I went from just a basic tree to adding roots to it, and then thinking about who might be in the tree, what each of the different parts represent. So in this case, it could represent an organization, like a school.
Oh, the people who live in the
And
tree, the birds. Yeah,
yeah, so
sorry.
birds could be people that benefit from the tree in some fashion. The leaves could represent the clients or the students or the products. Lopped off branches could represent old thinking and old ideas. And then the chainsaw came out as a sense of what the threats might be. And then a wooden stools repurposing. And so as I said, you could just keep going with this. I just
Yes,
love this as a thought exercise, and really really valued it. Thank you.
very nice. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing. Yes. We have Catherine next. Let me tell us what was your metaphor?
Yeah, it was great. It's amazing how you can just build and build and build. I started off with the leaf. It's classic kind
Hmm.
of ecosystem kind of analogy, and then it just built into like, so yeah, representing growth, and then the caterpillar as a stakeholder, and then the caterpillar turning into a butterfly as transformation, and the bees pollinating the flower as collaboration, and inputs in the form of like ideas and information to help things grow. Yeah, so it was really fun. Like, I love it.
Amazing.
I love that building on too. Like, yeah, continuing transitioning from building out the complexity into more of an analogies. Yeah, really, it's a great exercise.
Yes,
Thank you.
and also I love doing these exercises of like improvising first without really knowing where it takes me because it gives you a big pool to then pick from and say, oh, okay, you like Andrew did this tree with lots of things. Maybe you just want to use the analogy of the inhabitants of the tree. You know, you don't tell the story of the trunk and the chainsaw and all the other things, but just what are the little
Mm,
creatures and how do they benefit from it and how are they maybe at risk? And how does this ecosystem work? And maybe for a
yeah.
different problem, you want to talk about the roots and the parts and the and how the water flows through the tree. So it's really nice to build your vocabulary of what you could pull out for a certain situation.
And also I find too that like often when I'm doing graphic recording, I only have an opportunity to use these really fast metaphors, and I'm on to the next, sort of capturing the next idea and the next idea and the next idea. So you don't necessarily get that time to build everything out like into this, like it's a really great exercise just to practice and to as you say, grow your vocab.
Yes, absolutely. Also, when you're talking about graphic recording, for me, like when I'm sketchnoting, the most satisfying sketchnotes or graphic recordings are the ones where I stay in the world of one analogy and actually using not using a new world of metaphor for every image I do, but repurposing the same world, because then there is also connection just in the vibe, and there is some background knowledge from this type of world that actually brings more meaning to the whole graphic recording. So that's also actually a really nice exercise to do this world building in a visual way in abstract information.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, continuity.
Very nice. Is there anybody else who wants to either share verbally or visually, or who has a question or a comment?
I'll share. It's Lauren here.
Yes, Lauren, shall I give you the spotlight? I'll give you the spotlight.
I just did the lighthouse, and I didn't really end up changing the lighthouse itself, but the things around it. So whether there's some
Yes.
feedback around that. But basically the lighthouse is the kind of potentially an organization's purpose and vision, but that the staff were not necessarily equipped to reach it through the things
Can you
that
hold
they
a
had.
tiny bit higher?
Yeah.
Tiny
The
bit.
things
Yes,
that-
perfect. Ah, there they are. They are
Yeah.
rowing.
So they were only on a rowboat instead of didn't have a motor, didn't have like life jackets or life rings, and looked a bit confused. But and then obviously the sharks and the weather being the threats. So I just thought that was interesting in terms of I didn't feel drawn to kind of put any further detail on the lighthouse itself apart from the label, but to look at the what was around it to tell us.
Yes, exactly. Adding context, zooming out, making the world bigger. Sometimes we can also use a microscope and zoom in, but zooming out is something that we usually forget when we play, when we draw things. Very often we add details and details and details, and sometimes forget that, ooh, we could also actually open the scene to add things around it. Great. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else who is interested in talking to us?
Eva,
Hi.
Koshaya. So I chose the paper plane. I don't
Let
know if you
me
can
give you
see
the
it.
spotlight. Here we go. The paper plane. I love that.
And I have figured out a couple of questions. It's not very clear for some reason.
Yes.
Anyway, so a few thoughts that came to mind is, where is the paper plane going? Is it escaping something, or is it intentionally going somewhere? What values give it wings to fly? So those are some of the questions. Who threw the plane? Is it a leader showing the way? Why did he throw the plane? Is it some goal that he needs to achieve? I don't know. And the wind, it directs direction. So the wind could be corporate culture, the organizational culture. It could be anything really that decides where the paper plane's going. And I also drew a little butterfly. And maybe that's a challenge, or is there anyone in the way? It could be an obstacle, challenge, or even a victim of the paper plane. So these were some of the questions that came up.
That's amazing. But the little butterfly could also be like a fairy butterfly that actually gives the little flip that makes the paper plane go in the right direction. But yeah, that is a really lovely thought. Thank you so much for sharing. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more share if anybody wants to go for it. And also, if you have any other question that you want to ask me or anything, the floor is open for that as well.
Hi there.
Lou. Hi,
Lou,
Lou.
Lou Keeler.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, this is a great session. I loved the images you offered. I went with the door, and so initially I broke it down into what was behind the door. So I saw that as the unknown, and the door is an opportunity. I then went to like some of my favorite expressions, which is as one door closes, another opens. And this one was sometimes a better solution requires extra effort. So there was the door on the ground floor, but then you had to climb up to a door that was in an unexpected spot. This one was kind of like the door as you're opening the door, and sometimes you just don't know what's going to be behind there. So maybe better know beforehand what is there, just in case something comes and grabs you. And then this one was this person's going to the door, and maybe they really should look at the big picture because there's a barrier there that you could just walk around without having to have a door at all to reach people.
That is really nice. What I was thinking when I saw this image, I was also thinking, yeah, maybe it's a false opportunity, it's just it's not really a door. It's like somebody put that up. Maybe that's a scam as well. But
Yeah,
really nice. It's a really nice image for several things. But yeah, maybe there's also a way around.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So that was fun. I enjoyed exploring. It was great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Good. All right. Well, now it's 5 minutes left to the full hour. Ben, do you want to wrap up, or is there one more burning question from anybody? All right. In that case, let me just finish my part by doing what? Doing this. Going back to my screen, I'll share that. I want to say thank you so much for playing this game with me and exploring and all the amazing thought. I always love doing this stuff. Um, I'm planning on doing an online course about metaphors and analogies, like a full thing this year. Fingers crossed my motivation stays and I can get it done. You might want to sign up for my newsletter to actually be informed when this is the case and also other random stuff about my life in drawing and visual thinking. And also, I made a discount code for you lovely people to get 50% off my current online courses that I have, which are basically about learning how to draw as simple as possible. I call it pragmatic sketching. And I made that as well. So if you want to make a screenshot of this, cool. And otherwise, I'll give it back to Ben. And thank you so much for being here with me for this wonderful little hour.
And thank you so much, Eva-Lotta, for what a mind-blowing session. I just got so much out of that. And a few things for me, I certainly found how it can extend creativity. And I love actually what Andrew said, and I think a few sort of mentioned, you can just keep going and going with this. That action of zooming out and seeing what's around that initial object as a metaphor, the zooming in, like using the microscope. That's a metaphor within a metaphor. Look at that. And I just wanted to say thank you to Catherine and Andrew, of course, Glenn and others who've shared your fantastic drawings in the chat. To Catherine, Lauren, Kosha, for coming on and sharing as well. And Lou, like what we saw at the end there around doorways. I really love the playfulness as well of that, like the arm coming out, grabbing, and that door above the floor. Fantastic. I love that divergent thinking. I'm popping myself onto a gallery view. If you got your cameras on, that's great. If you don't have your camera on, it'd be awesome just to have your camera on briefly. Because I want to see, can you give us a thumbs up here? Who is currently a member of GRA, Graphic Recorders Australia? Who's a member? Yeah, we got a lot of hands, a lot of thumbs. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And a huge welcome to those who are not members or not yet members of Graphic Recorders Australia. I'm just going to pop a link to the site in the chat there. If you're interested in checking out Graphic Recorders Australia, we're a growing community. We've got big minds, big hearts, certainly big collections of markers and pencils and what have you. We're really into supporting the growth and quality of not only graphic recording, but just drawing at work. And as you've seen with what Eva-Lotta Lamm has demonstrated here, helping to express ourselves and tell stories, tell our clients' stories through words and pictures, through visualizing. And that's what we love doing here in this community in Australia and New Zealand. And that includes teachers and trainers, coaches, facilitators and consultants as well. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's actually 2 levels of membership. You don't have to be like a professional graphic recorder. So if this sort of mind-blowing creative drawing lights you up, this is what we love doing. So you might want to check out membership there. And thank you again to Eva-Lotta for offering that discount for your, I'm sure, soon to be upcoming course. I'm looking at you for motivation here in visual metaphors and analogies. So thank you again to everyone for joining us. This has been fantastic. It is being recorded, as you mentioned, so we'll send an email out to you once that recording is available. With that, I wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening. For someone who is joining, I think, in India and Switzerland, thank you for
Wow. Middle of
being
the
here at
night.
such odd hours. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.